Well, I mean, Chris, should we deal with the paedophile stuff? Because I need to. I feel like I need to get. I feel like whoever sent me that recording has got a lot to answer for, because I listened to it, and actually, it really has horrified me that someone who is in a position of relative influence. I mean, I understand PA have got quite a decent following. It scares me that this is the rhetoric, this is the narrative that we can expect from the leader of that movement, right? The guy's online defending this chap. Now, first of all, let me just pick the argument apart. After I listened to that, I thought, I need to Google this chap. I Googled him. He wasn't in his early 20s. Not that this matters, but let's just have some facts, shall we? Because I'm all about facts. He wasn't in his early 20s. He was 30 when he was convicted in 2016, which makes him my age, which makes him 35, right? He's a 35-year-old man. He's not in his early 20s. He was 30 when he was trying to meet a 13-year-old to have sex with her, which happened to be Plod. Collett argued that he had diminished responsibility because of his mental capacity, and he claimed that he had the mental capacity of a 14-year-old. Well, he's done remarkably well to pass his theory and his practical. He managed to drive from one end of the country to another to meet this child who he had groomed online to an extent that he was convicted. But anyway, all of that aside, right? I don't care what mental age Mark argues he is. He is a convicted paedophile, right? Now, let me just squash this argument that this chap, Cornelius, didn't know who he was letting into his house. I was housed in a MAPA hostel when I got released from jail, which is the most prolific offenders in the UK, female offenders in the UK, are housed in these hostels. And there were nonces in there, right? There were women in there that had killed their kids. And believe you me, they didn't get a good rap from me, right? But they weren't made very comfortable. But this is where they put me, right? Because they put me in line with the most extreme offenders. There were mass murderers, people that killed their children, torturers, really horrific child abuse, all in there. There is no way a Christian charity would have contacted this guy and said, first of all, on a human level, someone calls you up, right, Hemi, and says, listen, you're a Christian, we're a Christian organization, we've got a guy that's sleeping in his car, he's come out of jail, would you let him stay with you? First thing you're going to ask is, what did he do? Because let's say his crime was cutting the throat of everyone who calls themselves Hemi, right? Let's say the guy released.
I'd house that guy right now.
Let's be real about this, right? Let's say that the guy went to jail because he thinks that everybody called Cornelius should be beheaded. I mean, come on, just on a basic level, don't convince me that you didn't ask what he did. That's nonsense. Secondly, the charities are under a duty to
Jayda, can I give you a bit more information? James Shand worked for Cornelius before he went to prison.
There you go. So he didn't just rock up at his house. Exactly.
No.
As if you wouldn't ask. And the charity have got a duty to disclose this because he's a nonce. So if Cornelius had his niece, nephew, I don't know what his marital situation is, if he had kids there. So it's ludicrous to suggest that the guy didn't know what this fella had done. He knew he was housing a convicted paedophile. He knew that, right? And I say that with absolute confidence, because if he didn't, that charity's liable. Everyone's got their necks are on the line for this, for not disclosing that. So he took a nonce to a PA event. Well, blimey, I mean, you've got Physique Friday going on, so I don't know, it all kind of fits the narrative. But, I just
Also, Cornelius was attacked by a migrant that he housed, wasn't he, Chris? Do you know about that?
What was that? With a meat clover, was it? Something like that?
No, Cornelius. Wasn't he attacked by a migrant that he housed? That's why he ended up on the right or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, this sounds all entirely plausible. Doesn't sound like a plot at all.
His judgment is totally spot on. Cornelius' judgment is just without reproach.
Well, I can't tell you the amount of times the migrants I house have tried to attack me with meat cleavers. It's a common problem, I find. But it's BS, right? They're just liars. They're absolute liars. But Mark's shown himself up for the liberal that he is, and I'm disgusted, and I don't care about calling him out publicly. And this isn't tit for tat, because I don't really care what he says about, my accounts or any of that grifting stuff. I don't really care. What I care about is the youth, because they're the people that are going to be fighting this battle, and they're being indoctrinated by a bunch of homosexual, appeasing, loving, aiding, abetting, whatever liberals, and it shouldn't, and people that stick up for nonces. I mean, the main thing is that he was saying this guy's it puts it into context that this guy's mental age is young.
I know he's also got a teenage child right now, which, so if he's in his early 20s or late 20s, whatever Mark said, that must have meant that this lad with such a young mentality has slept around and got a child. But
at 5,
look, I would give Mark a little bit more respect to say, you know what, there was a fuck up. Sorry for my French. There was a bit of a mess up. We apologise. That shouldn't have happened. It's been dealt with. The guy's been cautioned. It's like, no. We ain't done nothing wrong here. We just didn't know about it. You know, like we didn't know he was a nonce. All these excuses. This is what puts him to shame. You know, like I've made mistakes. You know, that he done a 30, 40-minute hit piece on me, and some of it was true. Some of it was a complete false. He will never speak to me on the live show. You know, as you've seen on the live show, I'm not scared about asking you any question that comes into my mind. And I would not be scared to ask Mark any question, but he don't want to face me or anyone on this panel for that matter.
And you know, can I just give him something that he could have used as a defence? Not that he would necessarily be aware of this, but you said yourself, everybody makes mistakes, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily Mark immediately that made the mistake. It was Cornelius's misjudgment or what have you. But just in terms of like nonces turning up at events, let me give you an example, and a real example that happened to me. I went to, I was at the court in Essex, and Paul Golding was on trial for something or other, harassment of a person in their home, I think. And this guy turns up to support Paul. Now, I was at the court and there were activists there, and this guy turns up to support Paul. This is very early on in Britain First days, maybe 2014, 15, something like that. And this guy turns up, and, you know, as people do, they say, oh, Jayda, can I have a photo? Can I have a photo? Can I have a photo? So I've stood next to this guy, and like there's all sorts of people are there. Everybody that's there wants a photo. You know what it's like. Everybody wants a picture. So that's fine. We do that, and then Paul's in and out of court, and it's done. Turns out afterwards that this fella that was there that had turned up was a nonce. Now, the lefties, really, you know how the lefties are just liars, but the lefties said, oh, this is their regional organiser. He wasn't. I mean, I'm not going to say, look, he wasn't. They said that Paul made him regional organiser. Look, far be it from me to defend Paul Golding, but he didn't. Right? Let's just call a spade a spade. He didn't, right? But the guy was a nonce. I had no idea he was a nonce. I put a statement out, and I did this kind of was being pulled back by the party because they didn't want me to make it. But I said, I've got no issue with making this. If I had known that man stood next to me was a nonce, I personally would have, because he was quite weedy, right? And I don't like women fighting, but I personally, and my security team, who were very loyal to me and were very, very anti-paedophile, right? Anti-paedophilia, would have collectively battered 10 bells out of that nonce. Not just because he's a nonce, but because he had the audacity to come to an event, stand beside me in a picture, knowing that he was a nonce, knowing that I work with grooming gang victims, knowing how ferociously against paedophilia and rape and all of that abuse that these girls are suffering, he still came and had the balls to stand next to me, right? And he was a wet wipe. He just, I don't know what he thought he was going to get away with it. So I had said then, he's marked, right? And if he gets anywhere near us, I'm going to see to it that he's mangled. He will not be leaving our event upright. Now, people said, oh, you can't say that. You're meant to be a Christian. But I don't care. That's what I said after that, right? I made it very clear. And I said, yeah, I didn't know he was a bloody nonce. I can't vet everyone that comes up to me. I can't say, can I quickly just check you on the police records? I'm not old Bill. So you have to just sort of, you've got these public events, people are there. But I would have forgiven, it's not for me to forgive him, but I would have forgiven Mark if he'd have said, listen, fucking disgusting, dirty, stinking paedophile trying to meet with a child and have sex with her should never have happened. But he didn't. He stuck up for him. He
obviously behind the scenes, I've got no evidence of this. Behind the scenes, me and him had big chats on this, like, and we was both fuming. We spent a good half hour on the phone. I remember it well. Both of us absolutely livid. We had a conference call, which actually said, oh, Chris led the vote and Chris was the first to say, keep him on. Rubbish, complete nonsense. Because this guy previously had been infiltrated by Antifa several times. Banners was robbed, phones were robbed, people attacked. Our movement was embarrassed. Like, we, the Antifa guys, had a banner and celebrated it with the upside down, and they looked weedy by judging their legs and stature and whatnot. And I forgave him for that. I thought, you know what, you're London RO. It's Antifa's hotbed now. You know, look, these things happen. and I felt sorry for him to go through this at that time. But the nonce thing that came through, I was very vocal, and I literally remember saying he needs to go. And I was on a chat with him. I haven't spoken to him much. I literally said, look, you might be a nice guy, you might be a good Christian, trying to do the right thing, but you messed up, and I think it's time for you to go. This is complete truth, and this is what Mark will never face me about. You need to go. But Mark, you are the leader of this movement, so I'll have to respect any decision. No one's being sacked, Swiss. We're not going to say a single thing about this. We're just going to basically sweep it under the carpet, and that's what happened. But I was I was literally the only one very vocal in that meeting. You know, they all come out with their nonsense and say, "Oh, Chris was the first one to say let's have a vote, and he voted yes first to keep him on." Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. And that's another reason why he will never face me on the live stream. You know, Mark's very intelligent, way more intelligent than me. He will smash me in debate in a lot of things, but when it comes to things like this, or my personal life, or his personal life, that's why he will avoid me and get me blocked from everywhere, because he knows I know the truth.
Yeah, but let me just say something very quickly to you, Chris, because I hear people make these sort of statements all the time, and they say, oh, you know, so-and-so is more intelligent than me, and they could smash me in a debate. Well, actually, let me just put something out there. You have articulated, I mean, I've said my piece about homosexuals, abortion, all of that, right? I've made my feelings very clear. I don't think I need to do that again. But you have also you've made your stance very clear about where you stand with this paedophile issue and all of that. So as much as you might say, oh, you know, he's more intelligent than me, and he could tear you apart in a debate, I would beg to differ. Now, that's not to say that there's certain issues. Look, there are certain issues that I'm sure Mark Collett is better versed on than I am. I just don't know anything about them. You know, I'm not going to sit here and start talking to people about Nietzsche, and it's not my thing. So there are certain things that we're more like, just like I'm sure if I tried to debate him on biblical scripture, I'd probably wipe the floor with him, because I don't think that he's got a clue what's in there. But aside from that, I actually don't think it's that cut and dry, because really, I always say to people, right, don't worry about being the smartest cookie in the jar. That's not what this is about. It's about being moral, having principles, and knowing where you stand. There's a saying, isn't there? Stand for something or fall for anything. If you know and you're passionate enough to say, actually, I don't care what the circumstances were around that guy that tried to meet and have sex with a child, I'm calling him out for a nonce. I'm calling him out that it's wrong. He needs to go. The guy that brought him to the event needs to go. I actually think that you were far more decisive in that than Mark was, because Mark was looking at all of the grey areas where it might not have been the guy's fault because he's got diminished responsibility because he's young in his mind, or it might not have been the Cornelius's fault because he didn't do a DBS check and he didn't know what he'd done. And, you know, actually, I'm just putting it out there. Don't sell yourself short, because you seem to not be very grounded in your opinions, and that's all that matters. Don't worry about fancy words and dressing it up. As long as you know what's right and wrong, and you are fixed in your position, right, and you know that you're doing the right thing, I don't think that he'd wipe the floor with you. Not one bit.
No. I definitely wipe the floor with him on these certain subjects, with the nonsense, the homosexuality thing. The accusations against my name, the accusations against his name. Obviously, there'll be topics that he would smash me in. I agree with that. But yeah, I would wipe the floor with him in a lot of topics. And Mark, I'm calling you out yet again, bro. Come on the show. Come on the show. I'll debate you any day, any time, 24/7, bro. I'm always waiting for you, mate.
We'll see if he takes you up on that.
He won't. I literally, look, I know it's coming across a bit e-drama, guys, but this guy has made many lies about me and going into people's inboxes, texting people, oh, Chris is this, Chris is that. So just understand from my personal life, that's why I'm desperately want to talk to Mark Collett on the stream, because I'd expose him for the joke and fraud that he is. Right. Any comments from you guys, Liam and Hemi?
I've just got a comment about something I've just seen in the chat. Someone said Collett abandoned woes far too quickly.
I mean, when it comes to the IQ